class on test day? That feeling in your stomach when you realized you didn't study? You're staring at the first question, and it already doesn't make sense. You glance around, everyone else looks focused. You start thinking, maybe if I just recognize the pattern, I can guess my way through. You've already picked B twice in a row, and now you're doubting yourself. You start changing your answers, hoping you're not just choosing the same thing over and over. And then you get the test back. And you realize you had the right answer. But you changed it. That moment when you see your test paper, filled with the correct answers you second-guessed, is a moment that sticks with you. That feeling of knowing you had it, but you doubted yourself, is the exact feeling that follows most people into adulthood. The fear of getting it wrong forces them into hesitation. The overthinking forces them into inaction. The uncertainty paralyzes them, and by the time they decide, the opportunity has passed. This isn't just a test in school, this is the test of life. That feeling, that same doubt, that same second-guessing, it never left you. You do it when making big decisions. You do it when you overthink instead of acting. You do it when life presents you with the same question over and over again, and you keep failing it. Life is the hardest test you will ever take. And most people are failing. Not because they're not smart enough, but because they weren't paying attention. Tell me, what lesson keeps coming back into your life? What's something you've failed at more than once? How many times has life given you the right answer, but you second-guessed it? The problem is, in life, you don't get an answer key. You don't even get a study guide. You just get the same lesson over and over again until you finally learn it. Some people spend their whole lives stuck in the same cycle, retaking the same test, never realizing the answers were right in front of them. They blame circumstances. They blame luck. They blame everything except the fact that they never actually stopped to understand the test. Here's the thing, at least in school, you could say you didn't study because you didn't have the book. You didn't know where to look. You weren't prepared. But now that excuse is gone. 100 years ago, knowledge was hidden in books that only the elite had access to. 50 years ago, knowledge was locked in universities that only some could afford. 20 years ago, knowledge was online, but you had to know where to search. Today, knowledge is everywhere. Every lesson you need, every answer you seek, is right in front of you. And yet, people still fail the test. Not because they can't find the answer, but because they won't look for it. Life doesn't care if you studied. It will keep testing you anyway. The same struggles will repeat until you fix them. The same patterns will follow you until you break them. The same opportunities will disappear if you don't recognize them. And if you don't pass, you have to retake the test. Think about your life. The struggles you keep facing, the problems you keep running into, the habits you keep repeating. What if I told you these weren't random? What if I told you they were tests designed specifically for you? Because life isn't just happening to you. It's responding to you. You are constantly being given the same lessons, the same situations, the same decisions, because you haven't passed the test yet. Every challenge is an opportunity to prove that you have learned, that you have evolved, that you are ready to move to the next level. But most people don't see it that way. Most people react the same way every time. They complain, they make excuses, they run away, and they repeat. And life? It keeps giving them the same test. What if the reason you're stuck is because you're ignoring the lesson? If life graded you today, what would your score be? Are you choosing your answers, or just guessing? What if the right answer has been in front of you this whole time? Most people aren't failing because life is unfair. They're failing because they refuse to study. The difference between those who pass and those who fail isn't intelligence, it's awareness. It's who actually takes the time to prepare. Who sees the pattern before it repeats? Who makes the correction before they're forced to retake the test? So let me ask you again. Did you study? Because if you didn't, life will keep handing you the same problems. It will keep making you repeat the same mistakes. It will keep forcing you to sit in that same classroom, looking at the same test, wondering why nothing is changing. And the worst part? The test gets harder every time. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how problems seem to escalate when you don't deal with them? How avoiding one issue just leads to a bigger one later? How refusing to learn from one failure just leads to more severe consequences? That's because the test doesn't stay the same. The questions get tougher. The stakes get higher. If you don't learn how to manage money when you're broke, you won't magically be responsible when you're rich. If you don't learn how to handle relationships when you're single, you won't suddenly become better when you're in one. If you don't develop discipline when things are easy, you won't suddenly find it when things get hard. Life will keep making you retake the test. And the ones who refuse to study, they never graduate. Look around. How many people do you know who are stuck in the same cycle they've been in for years? Who are still dealing with the same issues, still making the same excuses, still repeating the same patterns? They're taking the same test over and over, and they don't even realize it. But here's the good news. The moment you recognize the test, you can start preparing for it. The moment you acknowledge that life is testing you, you can start studying. And once you pass, you move on. You stop repeating the same mistakes. You stop living in cycles. You stop wondering why things aren't changing. Because now, you're not just going through life, you're learning from it. You're applying the lessons. You're studying the test. And when the next one comes, you'll be ready. Because you did the work. Because you paid attention. Because you finally decided that you weren't going to spend your whole life retaking the same class. You chose to graduate. But most people won't. Most people will stay stuck in the same grade, making the same mistakes, wondering why nothing ever changes. And then they'll look at the people who passed the test, the people who studied, the people who put in the work, and they'll say, they're just lucky. Luck? No. They studied. They saw the pattern. They recognized the lesson. They did what needed to be done. And that's why they passed. That's why they moved on. That's why their lives changed while everyone else stayed the same. So I'll ask you one last time. Did you study? Because if you didn't, life will make sure you do. One way or another. And when that next test comes, I hope you're ready.